everyone, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. This is Melanie, and today we're going to talk about tools and embellishments that I think are not necessarily budget friendly, but maybe worth the price. Some of them can be budget friendly. You just have to do some shopping around to find them, but some of these, it's worth spending a little bit extra money in the long run. It's more a case of you get what you pay for. So I'm going to go through with these items. I'm going to tell you things that are, you know, must have, you're like sooner rather than later, and then some stuff that you can put off and maybe add on as your budget allows for. So the very first thing that I would think that you're going to want to invest in is a paper trimmer. Now, I'm going to do a separate video on paper trimmers because there's a lot of different options out there, and there's some pros and cons to all of them. And so I think a separate video is warranted on that. Just keep in mind that there's usually a reason why they're cheap, and I think it's worth spending a little bit more money on it, and you will be much more happier in the long run. And this is a tool that's going to last you many, many years. So again, if you average it over the life of the tool, it doesn't sound nearly as bad. But as I said, I'm going to have a separate video on paper trimmers. If you don't want to invest in a paper trimmer right away, if that's something that you feel you can get away with, you will still need something at some point to cut paper with. So an X-Acto knife, don't you love my little protective cap on it? I lost the one that went with it, so we're just using a pen lid. But an X-Acto knife is a helpful tool. It's actually even helpful even if you do have a paper trimmer, but just something to keep in mind that this can go a long way to putting off the paper trimmer. But you do need also a self-healing mat. Now, my desk has a huge one on here, but I also have this small one. Just keep in mind what kind of work that you're doing. So if you were going to scrapbook with 12 by 12 papers, for instance, this might be a little bit on the small side. But if you're just making cards, this one works perfectly fine. So you do want something that is going to work with your knife or your blade, so that it doesn't dull as quickly and you have to replace. So that's another helpful tool, either in conjunction with a paper trimmer or in place of a paper trimmer. But trust me, in the long run, you're going to want a paper trimmer. Okay, so that's that. The other thing that you will need in order to cut paper or trim paper will be a good pair of scissors. And you want a pair of scissors that will allow you to do what we call fussy cutting, which means being able to cut out fine, detailed images. I love these particular scissors. Now, they do take a little bit of getting used to because they don't have the normal, what do you call it, grip or a handle for them. Now, these are by Fiskars, and these are also by Fiskars. So this is another pair that I quite like, a little more traditional. I mean, I got these for 99 cents, and they're fantastic. I really do like them. It's nice to have a nice sharp pointed end to get into those little details. Now, to be honest though, I love these ones even more. So they do have a safety mechanism on them, which you just release, and basically you can use your whole hand to trim out images. I find this is way less stressful on my hands. So if you're someone who has something like arthritis or has issues with your hands, you may find that this is a little more ergonomical. They're spring-loaded, so you don't it's like you're not fighting against them. But both pairs are really great, but I do recommend these. Okay, so good pair of scissors. Absolutely need those. The other thing you're going to need is some sort of stamping block. Now, in a pinch, any sort of acrylic container or lid will work. Give that a try. I actually have a set of blocks, all various sizes. The thing with blocks is you have to make sure you have them big enough, right? Because they do come in different sizes. So depending on the stamp collections or the stamps that you have, this smaller one may not cut it. This one may not even cut it. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, not budget friendly at all, but something to consider is a stamp positioning tool. And I will do a separate video on that because it truly is not a budget item. But I'll talk about what kind of stamp positioning tools are out there and how to make them work. Okay, so you do need some sort of block of some sort or something that you can mount your acrylic or clear mount stamps on. Other tools that I think are very important, you should have a pencil and you should have a white eraser. White erasers I find are much more friendly on the paper as opposed to like a red rubber. Okay, you should also have a good black pen. I like the Sharpie pen. This is not the Sharpie marker pen, but this is more like a ballpoint pen. I really like that one. A bone folder, or in a pinch, a credit card will work, or a popsicle stick. Something basically that will help you get nice crisp folds when you create your projects. Paper piercer. This is very useful for just even adding texture. Not necessarily a tool that you need right this minute, but something that is pretty economical and you can do a lot with it. If you had a large, like a thick, maybe almost a darning needle or something, that would also do in a pinch. But again, from an ergonomic perspective, this is much easier on your hands than a needle to poke holes. So that's another tool that I think should be up there, maybe not right away, but you know, fairly soon in your priority list. My beloved Cutter Bee tweezers are, I think these are Cutter Bee. Tweezer Bee, they're called. Tweezer Bee. These are fantastic tweezers. Mine's actually broken. The little grippy thing is broken. They're super fine tipped. They work the opposite way of eye plucking tweezers, right? So in this case, you have to push to release as opposed to push to hold. And this is great for things like if you're tying bows, you know, on a card or something, and you're, you know, how you need an extra hand, you can actually use this to hold things in place and then finish your bow tying. It's also great for placement of sequins and things like that. So again, not essential for right off the bat, but this is not that expensive and it's a great tool that's going to last you many, many, many years. Okay, moving on from basic tools, let's talk about adhesives. So in my crafty haul from Target and from the dollar store, I purchased some glue sticks, and those are great, work fine. But some things that you may want to consider as you move along is something called a two-way glue pen, or a glue pen in general. It doesn't have to be necessarily two-way. What's nice about this is that you get a finer point tip on it. This one actually isn't even that fine, as opposed to, let's say, something like the Quickie glue pen, which actually has like it looks like a ballpoint pen, right? What's nice about this is this can allow you to be very precise in your glue placement. I find this glue is great for adding light embellishments, nothing too heavy. Okay, so that's something to consider. Again, not necessary right off the bat, but you may want to consider something down the road. Okay, two liquid glues that I find phenomenal and have their place besides the glue stick. One is the Tombow Mono liquid glue, and it's a little disgusting, sorry. This is super strong glue. Like, this will hold a lot of items down on your paper. It does not warp your paper, which is phenomenal. I also like this Tombow Mono liquid glue. This is really great for paper to paper. It's got a pretty precise tip on the end, which is nice. This will not warp your paper, which is really, really important. So if you're looking to add something with a little more precision with some staying power, I recommend these two glues. Another glue option, again, maybe not something you need right off the bat, but you may find as you start building your stash up that may be helpful, are glue dots. Now this particular type is on a roller. You can get them in a box, on a sheet, that kind of thing. That doesn't really matter. I wouldn't go too large. These are actually fairly large. I prefer them a little smaller than this. So not too tiny and not too small, just right. I'm sure that's very helpful. But glue dots are really great for adding smaller items on your page or on your card, and you don't have the mess of the liquid glue. So again, not necessary right off the bat, but something you may want to consider down the road. Another phenomenal adhesive is the Score Tape. It is super strong. Like if you're doing any sort of like making boxes and stuff like that, this is the kind of tape that you want to use. I think it runs maybe about $5 or $6 for a roll. I think this is typically the size of a roll. It's heat resistant, so you can use it for things like embossing. If you ever get into foiling, that works as well. So not only is it great from a construction perspective, but also great from a decorative. It tears easy, you don't need a pair of scissors for it. It's just really good tape. I've got it in the 1/8 and 1/4 size. If you needed to start off, I'd probably recommend just getting the 1/8 size, but it's up to you. 1/4's, you know, very useful as well, which is why I have both sizes. Okay, so we talked a lot about using markers in my haul videos from Target and from the Dollar Tree. I do think that there are 2 full-size ink pads you should invest in relatively quickly. Okay. The first one is a black ink pad, and I recommend you get a full size. We'll talk about ink cubes and stuff down the road a little more, but really, you're going to use this. Like, this is a workhorse, and I recommend getting a ink pad that's going to do multi-purposes, so that it's going to grow with you as your crafting changes and develops. This particular stamp from Simon's, or particular ink pad from Simon Says Stamp is one of them. It is their Intense Black Premium Dye Ink. It says 4 solvent and alcohol markers. Now, alcohol markers are not inexpensive. We're not going to kid or joke about that. But Sharpie markers are an alcohol solvent based type marker, and if you use that in conjunction with this, you're not going to get any bleeding, which is really great. It's also waterproof. So if you need a black ink to do your watercolor, this will work for that as well, which is great because quite often the two don't mix. A lot of black ink pads are good for watercolor and basic stamping, but not good for alcohol, or they're good for alcohol and maybe not so good for watercolor and basic stamping. So this one here is a good ink pad. Simon Says Stamp is an online store. You would purchase through there. Just watch for their sales. I think this probably runs about $7 or $8 maybe. Don't quote me on that. But they do often have sales on their brand of products, and then you can get it for a cheaper price. So that's something to keep in mind. The other ink pad that I recommend is, it's called Versamark Watermark Stamp Pad. This was one of my very first purchases when I first started stamping. What's great about this is you can use this with any stamp, and it's going to give you a tone-on-tone look. So if you stamp it on, let's say, a blue paper, it's going to give you a slightly darker color. So it gives you that tone-on-tone look. The other great thing about this is that it stays sticky for a while, which means you can use it for embossing powders. I'm going to talk about embossing powders pretty quick here, but very versatile ink pad, and highly recommend full-size pad soon. Okay, let's talk about rulers. So there's three types of rulers that I use all the time, okay? The very first ruler, this is nothing special. I just got this at Target. It's the Up and Up brand. I maybe spent a couple bucks on it. I don't think I spent much more. What is nice about this is it is a metal-edged ruler. So, you know that X-Acto knife? This is great for using with that because it's not going to cut into it like you would if it was an acrylic ruler. So, great if you're going to go the X-Acto route, okay? If you're not going to go the X-Acto route or you don't feel comfortable using that thing, this one here, while it's still a great ruler, is not as usable as the other ones that I'm going to show you. And okay, so primarily I use this with my X-Acto knife. Another phenomenal ruler, and I think, like, I bought this at Simon Says Stamp. It's by Westcott. You probably get it elsewhere. It's not expensive. It's like $3 or something like that. It's called a T-square ruler, okay, and that's because it's got this edge here. What's great about this is you butt this against the edge of your paper, and so let me see if I just took this as an example. You can butt this up against the edge of your paper, and now you know that your line is going to have a perfect 90-degree angle, and it's going to be perpendicular, and you're going to get nice, beautiful, straight lines. This is also great for helping with stamp positioning. So it's clear. It's got the, you know, normal ruler markings, but the fact that it's got the end on it and it's clear, really great tool to have in your arsenal. The last ruler that I think is particularly helpful if you are a little bit anal like I am, I like things to be straight, especially for scrapbooking. I don't use this so much for card making, but definitely for scrapbooking. Commonly used in the quilting world for cutting fabric. I love using mine in the paper world. What's great about it is it's got multiple markings. It's got, it's clear, it's see-through, so I can line pretty much anything up on a page really, really easily. Okay, so if I had to say buy one ruler straight out of the gate, I would say get the T-square ruler, right? If you're already a quilter, or maybe you used to quilt and you're not quilting anymore, this one's really good. Okay, let's talk about other tools. This is a Heat It craft tool by Ranger. Again, not necessary right out of the gate, okay? But if you're going to get into embossing, like I'm going to talk about here shortly, this tool will melt embossing powder. Now, if you listen to someone like Tim Holtz, you know, they'll say you should use a proper heat tool, heat gun like this one, for embossing, and the reason why is that it gives you concentrated heat onto it, melts the powder quicker, which is true. I much prefer this for heat embossing. But if we're going an economical way, this one not only does the heat embossing, it takes a little bit longer, but what's really great about it is that it's got this wide base. So this is fantastic for drying your paints and other mediums if you're impatient. Again, not necessary right out of the gate, but something to keep in mind as a tool that you will find very helpful. Okay? That's right. Copy paper. You probably already have some in your house. Steal some and put it in your craft supplies. The reason why I say that is because when you're first starting out, cardstock can add up pretty quick, right? And when you're still new to stamping, you're going to make mistakes. A big ream like this is not very expensive. So if you make a mistake while you're practicing, you're not going to feel bad about it. The paper is definitely thinner than cardstock, and don't get me wrong, I like working on cardstock, but this is a great tool when you're first starting out. I actually was at an expo a couple years ago, and one of the demonstrators there only ever stamps on copy paper. And she said basically the reason why was that way if she messes up, she doesn't feel bad. So even though she's a seasoned stamper, she still, you know, is cost conscious and concerned about it. Her thing is, you know what? I stamp it on here, I color it. If I like it, I then take a glue stick and just mount it on some inexpensive white cardstock. And it has the same thickness as if I had stamped it on the cardstock in the first place, but now I know that I haven't wasted anything with my little mistakes. So copy paper, people, it's a good thing. Okay, so now let's talk about embellishments that I think are relatively budget friendly, okay, but definitely not necessary. You do not need these to make your cards or to start making cards. These are embellishments that are going to take your cards to the next level with relatively little little output, I guess, monetary output. Okay, so I've got a few samples here of things that I'm thinking about. So now I purchased these from Pretty Pink Posh, but you can buy these almost anywhere. So shop around and see what's available. You might even be able to find these at Target and Walmart or something similar. I just happened to buy them from Pretty Pink Posh. I think they run like maybe $3 or $4 a pack, which you're thinking, oh, that's a little pricey. It's not dollar store. Well, that's true, but look at how much you get in here, you guys. If you think about it, you're maybe gonna put 5 on a card, not much more than that. So you're gonna get a ton of use out of one of these. The trick though, and this is important, you need to buy neutral shapes and neutral colors. Well, sequins typically are neutral shapes, but these ones happen to be shaped sprinkles, I guess you would call them. So I recommend that you focus on getting things like gold and silver and clear or iridescent type things, okay? Hearts and stars and circles, and then of course like the sequins, are all pretty neutral and you can use them for anything. So I bought some of the large stars and some of the small stars because when you're putting them on a card, it's nice to have 2 different sizes to play with. And then I bought them in the silver as well and in these iridescent hearts, okay? Now, if I were you and I was starting out, I would pick either the gold or the silver or the iridescent, right? So start with one set of 2 maybe, play with them, you know, use them, that kind of thing, see if you like them. Now, I know there are kits out there. You probably, like I said, you can go to Michael's or any of Hobby Lobby or whatever and find sequin packs. You know, check them out, and if they're colors you love, that kind of thing, go for it. Like I said, I think they're going to last you a long time. Just like I said, just keep in mind, you don't want a big stack of orange sequins because you're probably not going to use them very much. Unless orange is your thing, in which case go for it. But keep it neutral, okay? So I think these are a great bargain for how much you get. In other words, and how many cards you're going to be able to create out of them. If you're a scrapbooker, they work great as embellishments as well. They can be replacements for things like enamel dots if you see them online. So just, I mean, if you see people online using enamel dots, you can replace with these, okay? The other one that I think is a great bargain, because let me tell you, this stuff never empties out, is glitter. And I'm sure some of you are going to shriek and hiss and moan because yes, glitter can get places. But the nice thing about this is it can add just a little touch of something to your project. And seriously, I think I've had these jars for at least 6 years and I've hardly put a dent in them. The key again with things like glitter is go neutral. So, for instance, if you got the silver sequins, maybe you want to get gold glitter, or maybe you want to get a clear glitter, okay? That's kind of what I would lean towards, the metallics and neutral like a clear. But if you did mix one color and one the other, then when you want to switch it up, you've got that option, okay? So that is glitter. Another great product that takes quite a while to go through is by Ranger, and it's called Glossy Accents, and they basically say it's a clear dimensional medium. What this is great for is I mean, number one, it's a great glue. I mean, if you want something to stick, this is going to stick. It does take a while to dry, but you can use this as an accent on your projects. And quite often what I'll do is I'll have like a shape, like a cutout heart or something like that, and I'll apply this over top, and it just gives it a really glossy look to it, and it looks like something, you know, that I maybe spent quite a bit of money on, but I really didn't, because I think this bottle runs maybe $5 or $6. Please don't quote me on that. And again, shop around, but very inexpensive, goes a long way. Last, the other thing that I think is quite a good investment is embossing powder. If you buy the Versamark, it will work with embossing powder. You will need a tool to heat this, and a hairdryer is just not going to cut it. Okay, so that's the catch with the embossing powder. But realize, of course, once you have the heat tool, you have the heat tool probably for 20 years. I mean, I think one of mine I've had for about 15 years and there's been no problems with it. The other one I've had probably for about 10. So just keep that in mind. These run again about $5 or $6 for a pot maybe, and it lasts forever, right? So another great little tool, another great option. I love using embossing powder for sentiments to jazz them up a little bit. So I think this is great. Again, starting out, stick to the neutrals, metallics, a white. White is phenomenal. And then something like a gold, silver, or copper, that kind of thing. Okay? So that's all my, you know, toolkit kind of items with a few embellishment things thrown in. I hope you find that useful. Do shop around, and like any other time, watch out for sales, okay? So anyways, until next time, happy crafting!